Hi, this is Dr. Jose Saldivar with another episode, the Way to College podcast. And God, what a I just left a coffee shop and was talking to somebody about the podcast, and really, it really is. It's been such a blessing and opportunity for me to connect with folks and hear people's stories. And two of my guests have been sisters, and their stories are there's some similarities, but it's always interesting to hear the differences and sort of opportunities that go one way, don't go another way. And today, I'm committed to getting all of the stories of all of the sisters. And so, so today is a third, not the third, but a third of the sisters joining me today. And so I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. So Selina, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Sure. So I'm Selina Martinez. Like Jay mentioned, I have many sisters. I'm number 5 out of 6. We all grew up in Edcouch, Texas, and just had a really great community down there. I'm sure your listeners are starting to recognize how special that community really is.
I hope so.
Yeah. And I appreciate you documenting our family history too. It's actually really interesting because, a lot of my family is accomplished, went to Ivy Leagues or Stanford, like myself and Lisa. I followed her steps over there to the West Coast. But yeah, it's interesting because people will ask, and my parents brag about us all the time, right? But they'll ask like, oh, what are your dinner conversations like? And I mean, we just joke about like day-to-day life. Like we don't talk in, eloquent, we don't have these like really long drawn out conversations. And so it's interesting to hear you asked some of these questions about what our experiences at these universities and after, right, have all been like for us, because there are similarities, but there are also differences. I'm living in Austin, Texas, so I didn't, move back home, which some of my sisters did, and so that's also kind of just interesting to hear about, and really sparking other further conversations with my own family. So that's great.
Yeah, one of your aunts, reached out to me over Facebook Messenger, and I think it was after I aired Sarah's interview, and she thanked me, one, for sharing, and that she was obviously very proud of you all, and just, continue to do the work. So it's interesting that you're documenting your family's history. Not necessarily my intent, but I'm glad. I mean, if you all could use these, but I was thinking just before we got on, I was thinking, I would really love, I would love to sit down with all of you and your parents and have a conversation about that. Like just you sort of their thought process. And of course, I think every parent, right? You're a parent. Every parent wants the best for their kids, but in their mind, and Lisa, your story when she describes your dad, right? Very positive, kind of go getter. If he and your mom, if they could see, like at any point, did they think, wow, we've really got something here. And I don't know that you can ever foresee.
They need to write a book, or something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I would love to be a part of that, of getting that story down if I can in some way. But thank you for joining me. And I ask all of my guests the same question, and that is, if you had to go back and identify a starting point in your educational journey, what would that starting point be for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, they're definitely like, as a baby, right? Like I'm number 5. So looking up to all of my sisters and just everything that they were able to teach me. I think, you know, you could say it started from the beginning, right? My mom was a teacher. She would take us to the libraries and like really emphasize reading. And like that was our summer, right? Just spent at the library reading books. And it was great. I think too, so I was born the year that my dad started the Casa Video, which was a video store slash restaurant, right? Dinner and a movie. And so I grew up like counting the quarters and putting them for the bank, right? Like stuff like that. I'm in product management today. And so I like to say that the beginning, I was a product specialist at Casa Video, where, you know, I'd figure out what products that we would sell from Frito-Lay. So my dad was, you know, really great at recognizing like, hey, I'm a kid, I know what other kids want to eat. And so, you know, he let me pick out the candy and pick out the chips, or maybe it was just like giving me something to do, which I also, you know, is also valid, right? But yeah, so I like to say I was a product specialist at Casa Video at the age of like 4 or 5.
You know, I don't know who I was talking to, but I was reminiscing about Casa Video. And I remember as a kid, my parents had a relatively kind of tight leash on me. And so like I couldn't go far from the school, right? If I was in after school activities, kind of hang out there and get picked up. But I remember the first time I went to Casa Video, and it was like, you know, walking in like, oh my, and, you know, and I remember the video games, there were video games, and you'd sit and they were showing a movie all the time. And, and I don't know what it is. One thing that I'll always remember, I'm not a Dr. Pepper fan, but I don't know what it was about the fountain, the fountain machine you all had, and the Dr. Pepper there, but it was like magic. And still like I don't know what it was. To this day, like I'm not a big Dr. Pepper person, but I remember and thinking like I don't, and maybe it was because it was the first time I'd been there, and finally I got to see what all the kids talked about. And yeah, it's just such a special place, I think, for a lot of, I mean, obviously for you all, but I think for a lot of people who grew up in Ed Couch around that time, right? It's such an integral part of our childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and adolescence, right? So, you know, obviously you talk about mom and your summers and reading and the value of education. And I know Lisa spoke to this about the sort of the family kind of, Casa Video was really a family business, right? All of you were involved in some way.
Yeah.
And so it's really neat to hear you talk about, right? The work that you're doing now, and how, I mean, you couldn't, you know, foresee that you would go into the kind of work that you're doing, but, you know, being involved.
It was very different back then.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're a kid, you're growing up, and what's the age difference between you and your oldest sister, Connie? What's the age difference?
We're all 2 years apart.
Okay.
Me and my little sister are like 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, seeing your sisters, seeing them do well, what kind of impact did that have on you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, I was always looking up to my sisters and wanted to strive to not only be like them, but be better than them, right? There's a little competitive element there, at least for me. I'm just a competitive person. But yeah, like there was definitely a focus on achievement, right? And on pushing ourselves to, you know, be the best. I remember like getting a 90 or something like low 90, right? And my dad was just like, is this the best you can do? I was like, oh, okay, I don't think so. I can do better, right? And so yeah, like having them pave the way just really made it so that, you know, I wasn't thinking about whether I was going to college, or even like which college, but like which of the top tier colleges was I going to, right? And I think that was very powerful in like just setting that reference and frame of mind of like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna do this, like that's a given, right?
Yeah.
So that just really helped help push me to, have my sisters ahead of me. That really paved the way.
In a lot of my conversations, a lot of the folks that I interviewed didn't have somebody ahead of them, and you had multiple people, right? And so they, like you said, right, they're able to give you that expectation, set that expectation, and not just about, am I going to go to college, which again, top tier, right, university. But I imagine, knowing how to get there, having folks in front of you to maybe show the way, guide you.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that helped. But even when you got there, now you attended Stanford, correct?
Yeah.
So
I guess. Oh,
so what was that like for you? Like, what was that getting there and that transition like? You had people ahead of you that attended university, top tier universities. Did that make that transition any easier, or did you what kinds of struggles did you experience?
Yeah, great question. So I entered my freshman year, and Lisa was my oldest sister who graduated from Stanford. She was working on her co-term. But Lisa was also married, had a kid, so was living in graduate student housing like for most of her experience, right? So her experience at Stanford was very different than mine. Getting to Stanford was a culture shock, like just having all of these people that I didn't even know existed, right? Like my world was very, very much at Cal Chelsea, the Valley, like centered on that. And so it was both really exciting and also intimidating, being a part of these groups of people and leaving the Valley. I think one of the things I regret is that, as much as I had my sisters that paved the way, I think there was also this like independence that we all have. And I actually see in my nieces and nephews too, of like, oh no, I need to do it. I need to do it myself, like for myself, and like not really wanting to not only like hear advice, but like not asking for advice or input on like our experiences that could be shared, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting experience, and it was definitely a culture shock when I went to Stanford.
The again, a question that I think a lot of us get asked is, what were you majoring in? What is it that you wanted to do when you got there?
Yeah, so Stanford actually had this pre-college camp experience, whatever, called Stanford Summer Engineering Academy. And so Lisa was the one who said, like, what are you going to study? And I was like, well, I like math and physics, right? And she was like, you should do engineering. She was actually working for Dr. Lozano, who I forget his exact role, but yeah, he was, I think, focused on getting minorities or people from underrepresented minorities into engineering, and so he ran this program, C, which was a few weeks before Stanford even started, and it gave you a taste of all the different types of engineering majors that you could major in, and so that was like fascinating. I loved it. Like I fell in love right off the bat with mechanical engineering, product design. And so from the beginning, I was kind of deciding between those two. Yeah. And I ended up majoring in product design. Yeah.
And what exactly is product design?
It's a great question. At the time, the program has probably evolved from now, just based on technology and all that. But at the time, it was the process of designing products. And so think of anything you use, right? The microphone, the headphones that you have on, any physical product that we have. There are people, and there's a process to come up with how to create that, right?
Mhm.
And so it involves a lot of engineering, especially for, well, physical products. Now I'm in software. And so that's where, things definitely change and involves software engineering, right? So a little bit different, but still pretty similar processes where you start with a need that someone has and, figure out what sort of, what you can create that will fill that need.
So that's interesting. That's fascinating, right? We, I think, when I started the podcast, part of it was because a lot of the students that I work with, first year college students, a lot of them first gen. And so there were a couple of things that I saw happening. They were anxious about their careers and what they would major in, and kind of questions about, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? And is this really what I want to be doing? And then there was the issue of a lot of the students coming in with tunnel vision, and they knew 5 jobs, they knew 10 jobs, right? Because that was what they'd been exposed to, or what people told them about, right? You want to make money, go into healthcare.
Doctor, lawyer, yeah.
Yeah, doctor, lawyer, teacher, criminal justice major, because I want to go do some law enforcement, right? Yeah. And I always, I always encourage them and remind, like, there are a lot of jobs that you don't know about yet.
Yeah.
And so, when you said product design, I was like, well, wait, what's that? But right, when we take that for granted, though, right? Because there are folks that design and think about and have these conversations about the products we use every day. And so, thank you, one, for that perspective.
Sure.
You, before we, as we were starting, you said this is the work that you've continued to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't find a lot of folks that stay sort of, and I interviewed your husband, and he talked about sort of his circuitous route, and and all of the different things that he's done and where he's at now. What is it about this work that has kept you connected to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, well, and product design as a major, right? And there were a lot of challenges that I faced just being in engineering, not feeling like I was as prepared as I could have been, or, compared to like all these other students, right? Engineering, you have to take so many classes and so, I had to be a little stubborn, a little persistent that this was what I was going to do. And also, like, to your point, like it was a blend of a lot of things that I found exciting and interesting. And so, the major itself is a blend of art, psychology, and engineering, right? Which kind of hits on like a lot of different concepts and like brings them all together, which is really cool. Like I took some awesome art classes, right? That were just fun, and like it was something that was great. And then the psychology of like how people think and what makes them, want to purchase something, right? Like that was also just really fascinating and continues to be. And so, so from, that major and what makes me, want to, or continue to this day of being in this product management field, is really being able to have these conversations with people and understand like what their problems are, right? And just come up with ways of like, hey, like I can make your life better with this, this solution, this tool, this product that I worked with this team to create. And just having those wins is really fun. It's really powerful. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. I hadn't thought about, when you said art, psychology, right? The engineering part. I didn't anticipate that. It's really, really cool. Like now I'm like, man, I should have majored in product. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. But then even,
one thing, being in software development in the technology field, like it has also been like advantageous, right? Like I think when you talk about careers,
Yeah.
that will like set you up for success later on in life, that is also a, motivating factor. Let's say. Yeah.
Um, the other thing that really caught my attention as you were talking about your work and the continuing in the field was that I overlooked, didn't anticipate, was helping, like, people have a problem.
Yeah.
And so being involved in that process of how can we make someone's lives better, or how can we, address this problem? I think that's really cool. And I could see how, anybody interested sort of in, a lot of folks are very interested in making the world a better place, right? As cliche as that sounds, but even like you can find opportunities to do that in so many fields. And so to hear you talk about that, I think that's really cool. I want to go back a little bit because you brought up a point about being in engineering, being an engineering major, and not feeling as prepared.
Yeah.
Right? And you characterize yourself as being a little stubborn, and continuing with it, right?
Yeah.
What advice would you give somebody? And I don't know that you experienced this, but I have no idea. I'm just thinking about larger sort of demographics, right? I can't imagine there were a lot of women in engineering.
Right.
One, but two, then feeling ill-equipped, maybe not prepared enough.
Sure.
What advice would you give somebody who maybe finds themselves in that very space right now?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, and I spoke to this a little earlier, of like not asking for advice, not asking for help, right? Like I wish I had done that more often. And in a lot of ways, I think it's like shortcuts, right? Like not having to go through it yourself, recognizing that you're not alone, right? Is really important. And it's not about you, but like about circumstances, right? Like it's not that I wasn't able to, I wasn't smart enough, or like I wasn't, not like this wasn't for me. I feel like a lot of times people will fall into those traps of like, it's the growth mindset versus the
fixed mindset.
Yeah. Of like, this is who I am. And so like, this isn't for me because I'm having a hard time with it. Right.
Yeah.
But instead it's like, oh, here are opportunities for me to grow and learn. And like, I just need to reach out to people to like help me. And maybe I need a little bit more help than, those other students that went through their, different education that, was more focused and more prepared, prepared better. But yeah, so one, like, know that you're not alone, know that it's not, specific to you. And if this is something you really want to do, like there are so many people out there that want to help you succeed.
Yeah.
And so, reach out, ask for help.
Your older sister was there. Did you ask her for help? Did you ask her for help?
I don't think so. It was helpful to have her there, right? Like I especially in like feeling alone, or feeling like that culture shock, because that was also, there was this academic part, but then there was also culture shock. And so having that piece of home was like really good to just like go and visit her and like feel like, there's a part of my home there. And so I definitely like leveraged that. I don't remember asking her for specific advice about certain things, but I don't know, maybe my memory is not the best.
So, you make it through engineering.
Yeah.
You, maybe would have, if you had to do it over again, sounds like you would have asked for a little more help, right? Not been as stubborn. What came next for you? Like as you're getting ready to leave Stanford, and you've got that Stanford degree in hand, did you have was the job waiting for you? Did you have a hard time finding work after that? What happened?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I actually, I needed an extra quarter, I needed an extra quarter to complete the degree. I was working like part-time just at a yogurt shop or whatever, just to, finish things off. And then afterwards, it was kind of like I had, other people that like had these internships over the summer, and then so like their, dad's friend or whatever had them a job lined up right as soon as they graduated. No, like I searched for places, applied online. I ended up working, as an internship, working for free at one technology company that I found, interesting, and and later that turned into a job, right? And so there was that kind of ramp up of like, oh, now what do I do? I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure it out, right? And didn't have, as again, the whole asking for help maybe, but then also like network, right?
Yeah.
As much of a network to leverage. So you just kind of made it happen. But Bay Area and like technology, it isn't what it was today. It was like just growing. And so like I was hearing from other classmates too that had majored that they were going into this field called product management. And so it was like, okay, cool. But like, even, product design, product management, like, what is that? What does product management mean? Right. Yeah. Had no clue. But, learned very quickly at these companies. Yeah.
So tell us about the work that you're doing now. You've alluded to it, right? You've talked about what people need, right? Solving problems. But you also talked about software. So tell us a little more about the work that you're doing now. What is it?
Yeah, so I am the director of product management at a company called Core Spaces, where we make, really amazing real estate. We develop and manage these properties. Most of them are in student housing, although we have some others like rentals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they create these like these really nice places to live. It's insane. And so what I'm doing at Core Spaces is managing our software products.
Okay.
So we have products for our staff to help make their jobs easier. And then we also have products for our residents. So if you're looking at a place of ours, we have a mobile app so that you can pay your bills and RSVP to events, because we have really nice events going on at our properties all the time. It's kind of crazy. I'm like, I didn't go to college like this. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's saying a lot, because I feel like, I don't know about you, but I lived in some really nice spaces at Stanford, and when I described some of the experiences, even in the living spaces that we had, like some of my friends were like, what? Like, you had your own house and a cook and then we had a basketball court outside, barbecue, it was like, what? Yeah. Wow, that's cool. How did you get hooked up with Core Spaces?
I applied online. Yeah. I found it. Yeah.
You've got to give me more. Give me a better story than that. I'm kidding. Right.
No, it's actually been interesting, because we talk about like networks and stuff like that. And most of my opportunities, like the Stanford name carries a lot of weight. And so, it has been, I've been fortunate that like, my name does kind of come to the top of the pile for these places that you're in some ways blind applying, right?
Yeah.
So there have been several jobs that I've gotten like just from that, right? Like, oh, I found an opportunity online and applied, and yeah.
The, you know, a lot of folks that I've talked to actually a lot of them have talked about networks.
Yeah.
And the power of networks and helping them get in, right, get particular jobs or get in different fields, helping them kind of get a leg up, right? So you know, you talked about the Stanford name giving you, you know, having there's weight to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, for folks, you know, what advice would you give folks who maybe are struggling on the job market, right? Recent college graduates don't necessarily have the name of a university behind them, but highly qualified, highly skilled, right? What advice, that having been through, right, this process already yourself, what advice would you give them?
Ask for help. I feel like there's a theme here. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so I've been on both sides, right? Like I've hired people and I've applied for jobs. And when you look to hire someone, like all of a sudden things become clearer, like what people are looking for, right? A lot of time when you're applying, you have the perspective of yourself. I think one of the things that's helpful, and I've gone to like a lot of resources, you know, different, whether it's individuals that offer, you know, the resume reviews, or even had some professional services where they do that as well.
Yeah.
Resume reviews and interview prep. Take advantage wherever you can find it, right? Of people that are willing to help you to, you know, fix up your resume, practice your interview skills, because it's a skill. You know, there are those that are really skilled at interviewing. And I myself have a challenge interviewing at times, right? Like I get really nervous and I don't, you know, I'm not able to put my best self forward, right? And so that's taken a lot of practice, a lot of just iteration. you keep, you know, trying, and you get better at being able to speak to the value that you provide.
Was there, have you experienced any disappointment when looking for a job? Was there ever a job that you were like, oh, I'd love this job, and it just didn't happen for you?
Yeah, well, when we decided to move to Austin, I was looking for jobs here, you know, for a long time. Actually, the job search extended to maybe about a year and a half.
Oh wow.
Where, you know, I had my other job. That's the other thing that helps if you have a job. So, you know, it's not as stressful, I guess, that you're trying to find. So, you know, if you don't have a job, don't try to find your perfect job. Like just find a job, and then that will like take away some of that stress. But yeah, it took me a while, and you know, there was a lot of disappointment, a lot of rejection. Again, I hadn't, you know, built up my network too much in Austin when I was applying for things, and so that was definitely a challenge, right? To get an in, even with the Stanford name.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe more recently there was a role at EA that I made it to the very end and thought I really had in hand, and you know, got that email, actually a phone call. They did call me, just saying like, oh, we're not going to move forward. Sorry. And so that was really disappointing because it was a great opportunity. But again, like applying to jobs just takes, like, there's a lot, it's like dating, right? A lot of rejection that happens, and you just have to, you know, be able to shake it off and not let it get to you. Yeah.
I like that. I appreciate that advice, right? Yeah, because I mean, you work long enough, you're going to experience it, right? And especially especially during those early years when you're trying to find, you know, you haven't necessarily established yourself, you haven't established a name for yourself. I mean, I think about it, I'm transitioning into new work, doing consulting work, and I was telling a friend, it's been hard because I feel like, part of me, and maybe this is a little bit of ego or hubris, but I was like, it's a new role, but it's, I see it as I'm doing a lot of the same thing that I've always done. And so it's like, I've got 20 years of experience doing this,
Yeah.
but still, I've had to experience a little bit of rejection and shaking it off, and it's a learning experience for me. And again, just kind of establishing, like, especially as you transition, if you're early in your career, transitioning is always tough. So I appreciate that advice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had, I wouldn't say I jump around a lot, but like I have, applied to different, or gotten different jobs within my career, right?
Mhm.
I definitely do it more than say, in the past, I think the previous generation is like you do something and you're in it for forever, right? For like your whole career. Um, I think it's definitely a different landscape now, in that, there are a lot of opportunities, and then also, businesses have a different mindset as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's definitely been, I've had a lot of practice, let's just say.
I love that. I love the way you phrase that. We, and I don't know if you took any classes at the D school. So there's a book that came out of there at Stanford, Designing Your Life.
Yeah.
And so we developed a course similar at UTRGV.
Oh, cool.
And so I myself and then another colleague kind of oversaw the course. And it was interesting because we speak to that. We speak to the sort of the landscape of jobs now. And I don't know if it puts students at ease, but I tell them, I like, you're going to change, like, just, your generation is going to change jobs more often than the previous generation. And the idea that you're going to stay at one place for a long time doesn't happen anymore. Like, that's rare, right? You're more likely to change jobs. And so, it's interesting because I think my students look at me like they don't believe me. Like, no, that's not what we've been taught. It's like, no, yeah, that's the reality.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, that there's still that mindset. Yeah, because I think especially in software, like, people change jobs all the time.
Yeah. I had a class, I taught all kinds of classes, but I had a class of education majors teaching, and one young man was like, "Sir, so I'm going to be a teacher, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life." And it's like, you don't have to. No, you can do a lot of other things, and even within education, there is a lot of mobility, and so helping young people see. And so I appreciate you sharing, like, even for your own experience, there has been a lot of mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to ask you for your age, Selina, right? But you're young. And so even, to say, like, even, given your experience and when you graduate, like, you've already experienced a lot of that mobility, and that is the landscape of today.
And so one thing, you mentioned the book, and that was Bill Burnett was actually the head of the product design department. So he was one of the authors of that book.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was learning that design thinking and applying it to products, right? Mostly physical at the time, but again, that process gets applied to software products. So yeah, very, very much, know exactly what you're talking about there. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, I didn't expect this. Yeah. So that's cool. When transitioning to a new job,
Mm-hmm.
so I have two questions. One is, why do you leave? And then two, what are you looking for?
That's a great question. I think one of my career coaches asked me, like, what are you looking for? I don't know. It's really hard to answer, right?
Yeah.
I do think, I I've left certain situations, it really varies. I think we started touching on too, like being a woman and in tech, in engineering, in tech, right? There have been some challenging experiences that I've had, right? Just not only a woman, but a Latina, and from a small community, like low income, right? Where there's like on the daily, there is stuff that people say and think that like, oh man, that can make me feel like I don't belong, or like, without meaning to, right?
Yeah.
And so, some of the environments have not been ideal, right? I know there's a big movement and I've gotten involved in our diversity, equality, and inclusion efforts. I do think, there's a recognition that's happened over the past decade of, realizing like, hey, we are not as diverse as we should be. And we want to change the environment so that it's more welcoming, right? Having diversity. And, so there's been a lot of positive changes in the tech industry, but it's still far from where it needs to be. And, being able to participate in that, I think has been great. It's a great opportunity. And I think I can help drive change at these different organizations. But yeah, so there have been different reasons, like, my more recent transition, there was some shakeup with leadership that, left me feeling vulnerable to, they were making job cuts all over the place. And so that's not fun, right? Being in an environment like that. And so I wanted to get back into a company that was growing, right? So that's kind of what drove me from the last place to here. And at Core Spaces, like when I was interviewing, so when you interview, interview them too, right? It's not like having them interview you, but you should also, try to figure out what the company is like, what their culture is like. And culture is not just, ping pong tables and stuff like that. Which is fun, but I mean, you never get to do that because there's always too much work, right? but but like how much turnover do they have? Like what's the structure, right? Who are you reporting to, but also who are they reporting to? And what are the goals that you're going to be measured against, right? Having companies that make that clear, you're going to have a better opportunity to be successful in those roles. So I forgot what you asked me, but
No, I think you've answered it, right? I asked, right, why do you leave? But then what are you looking for? And I think you talked about, right, sometimes the environment, right? There are challenging spaces. You also talked about that if a company isn't growing, right, if a company's contracting and it looks like they're going to cut jobs, right, then you obviously, I would imagine you sit around thinking, am I next? Right. What value do I have to the company if I see people who are incredibly talented being cut, right? And then, when asked, what are you looking for, right? You obviously, I think being able to, and this is just something that I think I've noticed as a theme from what you've shared, is being able to make like a contribution, and whether that has to do with the work environment, the space, right? Equitable spaces, but even you talked about problem solving and making people's lives better. And so finding a place that's going to value you and help you grow and support you, but then also that the company itself is growing, right? Is moving in a growing direction. So no, you absolutely answered my question. So great. Thank you. Yeah.
And actually, you talked about, or I've talked about going and doing different things. And actually within the field of product management, a lot of times people just stay in one industry. So technology is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Every company is now using technology in some form or fashion. And so, you need people like myself, product managers, to help make decisions around products, right? And so I've been fortunate in I've been able to be in so many different industries. So, started out in kind of the social gaming when Facebook first opened its platform up to developers. So you had your Facebook gaming, but then also turned into mobile gaming. I've worked in the education, e-commerce space, selling products online, and really optimizing that website for that. I worked on the HEB app, right? So grocery, yeah.
That's cool.
Worked in more higher tech kind of database management tools, and now, real estate tech, right? So I've been all over the map. And I think to your point of what I'm looking for is really just being able to have an impact, and finding those, I find all of these industries interesting, right? I think you find people that have been there for, worked for 20 years in the same space, but their knowledge is amazing, right? All these little details of what goes on in their world. And I have loved, being able to get into this industry and show them, here's where technology can help you, and just, make an impact there.
That's just really cool. That's some fascinating work. I mean, now I have all of these other conversations I want to have with you about technology society. But
well, come up to Austin and we'll, check out the greenhouse, and we can talk more about product.
I may actually take you up on that. I've got so I'm working with an app developer on an app, and so I may need to get out there to meet with them in person. So yeah, absolutely, and yeah, love to. Selina, I want to be mindful of your time though, and so my last question for you is what would be an essential piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think I've spoken to this a few times, but we talked about the fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and just know having the growth mindset is really going to be able to open your world to so many different opportunities, right? And recognize that it's not, again, there are so many things to be learned about this world, right? And for your educational journey and for your career, just look for those opportunities to learn. I think I've said it before too, there are lots of people that are willing, more than willing, that really want to help you and, to see your success. And so reach out, leverage any resources that you can. And yeah, I think, we talk about this, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? But I don't think there are some people that do, I'm going to be a doctor, and go through their whole life and they're a doctor and that's it, which is great, right? But
yeah,
my journey's been a little more like what do I want to do at this moment, right? And it changes because I don't know, I find my interests change as well. So
yeah. Well, I think that's great advice. I think I appreciate you giving us I think a nice little dose of reality, right? Because yeah, we go through phases, we change, our interests change, and so I feel I appreciate that piece of advice because I think it'll resonate with a lot of folks. That
and it takes
not to be surprised.
Yeah,
what was that?
Pressure off too, of I have to figure out what I'm going to do right. Like I felt that pressure of like, oh man, people have their stuff together and like know what they're going to be. I have no idea. It's like, it's okay.
It absolutely is. Absolutely is. Selina, thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your time sharing your story and wonderful, so much of advice, especially on the career end. Thank you for sharing that and for sharing your perspective. And I look forward to connecting again and having some more conversations, because I think there's a lot more I'd love to ask. And we'll find a time to do that. But thank you again for today and for sharing your story.
Well, thank you, Jay. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. So this concludes another episode of Way to College Podcast. Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, follow, rate, all of that good stuff, and check us out on YouTube now. We're on YouTube too. So we'll see you next time. Thanks and bye-bye.